and welcome back to another episode of Creative Writing Advice with me, JJ Barnes. If you don't know me, I am the author of How to Write Your Story, which is out now. You can get it in ebook, you can get it in paperback. I take you from the beginning of your story all the way through to the end. I cover everything in between as well. It's available online, it's on Amazon, and it's on the Siren Stories bookshop. You can find all the links below. It's not very expensive, you can get it for 99p as an ebook. But it's what I'm hoping will help you, inspire you, encourage you, and give you the opportunity to get your story out into the world. So what I'm doing over here on YouTube is a similar thing. I am taking pieces of writing advice, I'm breaking them down, I'm trying to make them as accessible and fun and easy to follow because I want you to be able to write your story. So today I'm going to be talking to you about my top tips for writing your antagonist. So last week not last week because I wasn't filming last week, but the week before I did my top tips for creating your protagonist. Cat! If my tripod just wobbled, I just had to edit out a massive chunk of this video because my cat was attacking my camera. So the camera decided to wobble and it nearly went all the way over, so I'm just watching him. Cat, come on! Robin! Stop it! I'm scared he's gonna knock it over again. So I did my top tips for creating your protagonist, and now I'm doing my top tips for creating your antagonist. So the protagonist of your story has to have an antagonist, or they're not a protagonist. The protagonist is the character who you launch at the beginning of their story. You send them on a story goal. They go after to try and get what they want, and by the end of your story, climax, they've resolved that conflict. They've either got what they want or accepted that they can't have it. Your antagonist. Now, your antagonist is a great character because they're the person who makes that story happen. Your protagonist is who you follow trying to do it, and your antagonist is how you make that story entertaining. Because if nothing is blocking them, if nothing at all is getting in the way of what they want, you've got no story because they would just see something they want and go and get it. Now, your antagonist, it can be not a character, or it could be themselves. So if your character wants something and they just keep stopping themselves because they're insecure or because they are distracted or whatever, basically they're being their own worst enemy and stopping themselves from getting what they want. That is a different story to what I'm talking about right now, as is if it's nature or like an empire. I'm going to be talking specifically if your antagonist is a character. It is a person in your story who is the one stopping your protagonist. So, first tip, why are they doing what they're doing, right? What is their motivation? Because you need your protagonist to be blocked by your antagonist for a reason. They can't just exist to stop them for nothing. Why do they want to do that? Now, the reason is either they want the same things for themselves. So if the protagonist is off to find a pot of gold, your antagonist might want the same pot of gold, right? So your antagonist wants that pot of gold for themselves, so that's why they're doing it. That's why they're blocking them. That's what they have a reason for doing. Why do they want to do it? They want the pot of gold sorted. Or the other reason is because they want to stop your protagonist from getting it for a specific reason. So possibly that pot of gold is a family heirloom and they're very protective of it. Maybe it's cursed. Maybe they have, they want it to stay there because it belongs to another people and they don't want it stolen. Which these are all reasons your antagonist could be actually quite a good person, but they are blocking your protagonist. Antagonist doesn't mean evil. Antagonist just means opposition. So your protagonist wants the pot of gold, your antagonist wants to stop them getting it for a reason. That is it. So 1, why do they want it? Okay. Number 2, what do they want as well, right? Because they have to want something. Now, it could be the pot of gold, right? Which is fine. If they want the same thing, that's done. But if they want to stop them getting it for a reason, what is it they actually want? Do they want to be the protector of another people? Do they want to protect their child who is going to inherit that? Do they want to defend their family legacy and they have reason behind that that's big. Whatever it is that they are doing, why are they doing it, and what is it that actually matters to them? Because they need to be as rich and developed a person as your protagonist. So what they want has to be as developed and important and understandable. So why are they doing it, and what is it they actually want to accomplish? Those are your top two. They matter the most, because if they're just acting, if they're just doing stuff and nobody really understands why, they're just sort of behaving because it's convenient for your story, and your protagonist needs obstacles in their way so they can grow and learn and the story can continue, but they're not actually doing it for a reason, that story is going to be flat, and your protagonist is going to just be way more interesting. Your antagonist will be boring, and you don't want anyone boring, especially one of your main characters. So number 3, you need to give your antagonist history, backstory. I talked before about how your characters, they carry emotional bruises, they carry scars from their past. Now, this doesn't mean you need to explain evil behaviour with a sympathetic backstory. You absolutely don't. People can just be bad, or they can be selfish, or they can be vain. It's fine, but they are still people who lived before your story began. And you need to clearly demonstrate that this character, before chapter 1, was still alive, still motivated to do whatever they were motivated to at that moment. You just weren't with them. But they have experiences, they have history, they had relationships, they had family, they had friends, they had lovers, they had enemies. Their lives existed before chapter 1. So you have to just give them some personality, give them things they're interested in, give them things that they're frightened of. Show that they lived, show that they were around, show that they have things that matter, like that happened to them. And this then connects into number 4, right? Give them things that matter outside of your story. It can't just be the pot of gold. They care about more than one thing. They care about it because otherwise they're a one-trick pony and they're flat. Your antagonist is a person, as I say, in this style of story. So don't go telling me off and saying not always. In this style of story, your antagonist is a person who is alive. And everybody who is alive wants more than one thing. I always get told off when I use absolutes. Okay, I'm sure there are people alive who do not want more than one thing. But an interesting, well-developed character probably wants more than one thing, okay? They might have conflicting motivations, and that's always a really interesting thing to do. They might both want to stop the antagonist from getting the pot of gold, but also like because they want it to go to their family, but they might also kind of want it for themselves, and they have to decide, am I going to let it go as I really want to because that is the right thing to do, or am I going to try and steal it for my own nefarious purposes? And that's really interesting, but it doesn't have to be related to your plot. And to be fair, you should have things that they want and that they care about that don't have relation to your plot, that are just part of them. They exist, they shape them. They aren't focusing on them, your story isn't focusing on them, but they're there and they're part of them, and they build that person into a real person, because people do. We want more than one thing. We want to achieve more. I want more than just my career. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm very motivated towards my career. I care about my career. Like, if I'm the protagonist of my story, then wanting my career would probably be the focus of my story, following that journey. But that doesn't mean I don't have things I care about beyond that. Family, friends, and food and coffee, like things that matter. So make sure that they do too. And my point number 5, and this is probably the one that people won't prioritize as much, because you don't necessarily want your antagonist to be sympathetic, but they need to be vulnerable. They need to have something that they care about and that can hurt them. Now, their vulnerability might be physical. They could be dying, they could have a physical, like something that is wounded on them that they need to protect, or it could be a family member that they love and are frightened of. It could be just that they are insecure and don't feel confident in what they're doing. But they need to be vulnerable because it makes them risk something. If they have no vulnerabilities, if they have nothing that can hurt them, nothing that they are frightened of losing or frightened of having happen, then what they're doing is less important. Because they're not frightened, they're not bothered, they're not in danger, they're not risking anything. They're just doing something and they want to do it, but if they fail, doesn't matter that much, they'll just go and do some other evil scheme. If they don't care, if they're not risking something, if they haven't got something in that is a danger to them, their story will matter less. And your antagonist in your story scope is just as important as your protagonist. If your protagonist loses it all for what they want, that makes their story powerful. So imagine your antagonist is the protagonist of their own story. What are they risking? What happens if they don't get what they want? What will they lose? Because in that vulnerability, in that weakness, in that danger of loss, that is so much of their humanity. It's so much of why their story matters. And it makes them interesting and important. And that is good. So, those are my top tips for writing your antagonist. You have to give them something they want. You have to show why it matters. You have to give them history and backstory. They have to be people with vulnerabilities and passions and interests and hopes and dreams. And what they want needs to actually be understandable, because if nobody understands, nobody cares why they want it, your antagonist will be less interesting. So focus on making them human. They can be unlikable, they can be evil, they can be like a monstrous person, but they're still people. And people have more going on than just being monstrous. Doesn't mean you have to make them sympathetic. Doesn't mean you have to make them likable. But it means that they have to be actual people. Even Hannibal Lecter is passionate about art. You know what I mean? Like, has more than just being a monster. So, thank you very much. I hope this video has been helpful. I would love to hear about your antagonist or your favourite antagonist from other stories and what makes them rich, what makes them such a great character. What have they got going on that draws you to them as a person? Because I would love to hear all about it. So thank you very much for watching. If you subscribe to this channel, I put out a video every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. If I look like a sweaty blob mess, it's because I'm absolutely roasting and I'm very concerned that I just look like a blob. So I'm very sorry. I do try to at least look vaguely respectable for these videos, but I'm dying of heat. What else? Go to my website, which is jjbarnes.co.uk. Over there you'll find links to all my social media, so you can come and chat to me, you can talk to me about your stories, you can talk to me about anything you want, because I'm always on the Twitter. I'm a right addict. You can also find links to all my books and my work and my art and my photos and just my life. My life is all there, so come find it. And oh, comment. Oh, I said comment. Subscribe. Did I say subscribe? I can't remember. I get a little bit boggled in my brain. So thank you very much for watching anyway, and I will be back again soon. Bye.